multiple risk factors and also least likely to seek help on their own. So they're not seeking preventative care really in any area of their life, and certainly not this, because of all of the social conditioning they've gotten about what that would mean for them. So it's a subcategory of men that we find that this is really resonating with, because it helps them think about their mental health in a different way and makes it manly to be courageous and take action before things become catastrophic.
And that whole manly macho thing, is it useful to think about or try to understand where that comes from in the effort to get men to be more proactive about engaging in either maintenance or intervention if they're having issues that are going unchecked?
Well, I'll certainly chime in because it's one of my favorite parts about the background and history of this project is I don't think we can do this work without thinking about how we as a society have defined what manliness means, what masculinity is. And so one of the things we talk about, or that resonates with me when we present this topic, is we say we made the deliberate decision, as we say it, to fish where the fish are. So we want to meet men where they're at.
On the other side of the break, our final segment, incorporating wellness into the definition of masculinity, and some everyday guys tell their story. We're back in just a moment. Welcome back. You're listening to Mindset, Mental Health News and Information. We're talking about men and mental health with my guests, Sally Spencer Thomas. She's a clinical psychologist and founder of the Carson J. Spencer Foundation, and Jared Hyman. He's with the Colorado Office of Suicide Prevention. The two organizations, along with a Denver ad agency called Cactus, have put together an extraordinarily creative way to help men with issues ranging from everyday stress to suicidal thoughts. It's called mantherapy.org, online at mantherapy.org. And in a moment, we'll hear from some men who are featured on the website, mantherapy.org, and how they made it through some very tough times.
All we're simply trying to do is say, yes, you embrace what traditional masculinity, how it's defined. We're simply trying to just add a little tweak to that definition to say, in order to be that man, in order to represent yourself under those definitions, you can't do that unless you're whole, unless you have strong wellness all the way around, including mental wellness. And so I think that's, for me, it really resonates at that level.
And I'll just add that, yes, the three partners were absolutely steadfast in that decision. And we've gotten some pushback. And we knew we were going to get pushback because we're taking a bold approach. So we've not wavered. But, not all mental health professionals, not all people who have been in the mental health work for a while, whether they're consumers or providers, get what we're trying to do. And so about 7% on our survey said that they were offended or upset by this for some reason. And when we look at their answers, it's pretty clear to us that either they're in the field or like they've done a significant amount of work in their own life to come through a hard time or to change their ideas about masculinity, and they feel like some of the tone of kind of talking about some of those stereotypes brings us back a little bit. And our response to them is, this isn't for you. You know, you're already down the path in appreciating all of this, all of these issues. This is for the man who is, you know, challenged in some way by a mental health condition or a life circumstance and is kind of overwhelmed by that, where they can go in and they can see themselves and they can hear a tone that kind of reminds them of where they are, and like Jared said, then moves them to that next step. So we're okay with people, you know, again, it's not for everybody.
It's a small
person
percentage.
That makes them, yeah, the person that makes the mental health resource that everybody loves, I would like to shake their hand because it's pretty impossible, I think.
Yeah.
But that actually makes a change, you know. But when you're really focused on a target demographic that you kind of know what they're thinking, what they're needing, what they're looking for, and then you can respond to that and watch them move, that's what we're trying to do. That's where we're at.
And Sally, let me continue with you on that, on a related topic of the question that I asked Jared about whether or not it's useful to think about how we got here as a society and how men see themselves. I want to move on to some of the testimonials that are on the site. This is Tony.
My mom was a Native American, full-blooded, and she was mean. I took severe beatings from her, and my dad was just like a person who was there, who wasn't there. You know, kids are impressionable, and the only impression I got is I wasn't wanted, you know, even at a young age, is I don't fit in, I don't belong here. Not even in the military, where you're supposed to feel like, you know, teamwork and everything else. And I played on basketball teams, football teams, and I was an athlete in school and everything else. But I never felt that part of wanting to be a part of. Yeah, it was lonely life. It was a very lonely life.
Now, Tony goes on to talk about his struggle, his attempt to take his own life. It's a very compelling story. One of the cool things graphically is the way it is shot is also very compelling. Is when Tony starts talking, you got a close-up, full frame shot of his face. And then you pull back and you realize that he's in a wheelchair. And that visual alone, and in conjunction with him telling his story, I mean, it's heart-wrenching. It's really, really compelling. Your thoughts?
The one thing I remember about Tony, and Sally, correct me if I'm wrong, but Tony kind of found us and we found him at a community presentation about man therapy in Pueblo, Colorado. And Sally and I went down there to do what we call these little town hall meetings, to go introduce people to the site and get people bought in and to engage the community in man therapy. And Tony happened to be at that presentation and, you know, clearly spoke to him, and he connected with Sally and I after that, and, you know, was gracious enough to tell his story. And to me, that's the real power of this site. We've got this guy who didn't know anything about man therapy and showed up and was compelled enough and moved enough to tell his story on film, which is just, it's a really awesome story from my perspective.
Yeah, I just was so thrilled that Tony was agreeable to work with us. His story is completely compelling. You know, if you put yourself in his place, he had significant loss, significant hardship, just facing all kinds of obstacles. And when you get far enough in the video, he talks about how, you know, he showed up at this motel to take his life. And there was something about how he did that, how he showed up in the lobby, that the attendant in the registration desk was like, there's something not right here. And it really was that person in the hotel that kind of started to take action that saved his life. And so not only do I love that story about Tony's resilience and recovery, you know, from places that most people would think would be so hard to overcome. He's got a fully thriving life right now on every front. So not only his story, but also you never know. You could be someone in a grocery store and make a comment. You could be someone in a hotel lobby, you know, let alone a close friend or family member. The things that you can say when you're reaching out when somebody is in that dark place matters tremendously. And so really one of our messages is, you know, everybody plays a role in this work. Everybody can save a life.
He doesn't even know who the person was. And to this day, he doesn't know who this person was, but calls that person his angel, somebody who literally saved his life because they made that call and took the time to just go one step further to try to help this guy, somebody that they perceived to be in distress.
Total stranger.
Let's listen to Zach.
I played all sorts of sports when I was a kid, so I loved to bike, hike, run, play basketball, play football. My biggest hobby, though, honestly, is being a father to my two sons. I've got an 11-year-old and a 9-year-old sons, Alejandro and Santiago. And it all kind of came crashing down, and I had later what I figured out was a panic attack. And I've broken bones on a football field and torn ligaments on a basketball court, but none of that prepared me for that moment.
Now, Zach's story was particularly tough for me to listen to because that's a lot like my story. My own lived experience, my depression came as on the heels of divorce and job loss and all of that cocktail that a lot of guys go through. And he talks about his suicidal ideation, the idea that he thought about it, and that was the low point for him that compelled him to do something about it, and he reaches out.
Yeah, Zach's another great example of a guy whose story is so compelling, and he's made such a great contribution, not only in his life, but with his kids and his community. And what's one of the things I really enjoy about the testimonials, and we focused on them, is, tell the story of how guys got to where they were at, but really the message is about, here's what got me through, here's what helped get me out of that dark times and get me to a place where I'm now thriving. And what's great about it is the reasons are different. I mean, it depends on the guy and the story. And so one of the messages is, if guys spend some time or looking at those videos, is that there's a whole variety of things that got people through. It's not just going to see a mental health professional. It can be a whole variety of different things, from faith to a total stranger to friends and family, that there are a variety of different ways that guys can recover. And so that's one of the keys to the testimonials as well.
We're going to have to leave it right there. It was so difficult to try to figure out and edit what to leave in, what to take out. Still didn't get as much as I wanted done, but you can find the extended interviews of all of today's guests on the Mindset Podcast, available on your favorite app like iTunes or iHeartRadio. Until next week, for Mindset Mental Health News and Information, I'm your host, James Curtis. Dare to see mental health differently, because when we understand why we do what we do, it helps us all do better. See you next week.